to trade. We move on now, though, and head to Europe as a Chinese envoy has called for forging broader consensus for the political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Speaking at a UN Security Council meeting, Guang Shuang, China's deputy permanent representative to the UN, said that Ukraine crisis is currently at a critical stage and urged all parties to make greater efforts and work towards the same direction. Gang noted the conflicting parties should prioritise humanitarianism and civilian protection, abide by international humanitarian law and avoid attacks on civilians and civil infrastructure. This comes after Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that Moscow hoped for more peace talks with Ukraine but believes the war is currently going in Russia's favour. This comes amid warnings from US President Donald Trump, who said that the US will impose new sanctions on Russia and on countries that buy Russian energy, mainly China and India, if Russia does not end the war by August the 8th. Let's now take a closer look at what the Chinese deputy representative has said.
在过去的7天时间里，安理会已经3次讨论乌克兰问题。我们花费时间精力在安理会反复开会的同时，应该花费更多的时间和更多的精力去进行调节，推动和谈。中方将继续以习近平主席提出的4个应该为遵循，为和平奔走，为促谈努力，同国际社会一道，为实现乌克兰危机的政治解决，发挥积极和建设性的作用。
Well, joining us to discuss these comments and the wider ramifications of potential peace in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Keith Vaz, a former UK minister, joining us live from London. Keith, as always, a pleasure to have you on the programme. Let's first look at these comments by China. Clearly, they're looking towards potential peace. Do you think that this is potentially an ulterior motive because of those tariffs that could impact China from purchasing Russian energy, or is this really a Chinese stance on getting this war ended for geopolitical stability?
Good morning, Joshua from London. Who knows? The intervention of China is significant because they have not really been involved in any meaningful way before. And as we all know, the issue of tariffs is something that dominates the minds of the American administration, in particular President Trump. I don't think I remember a time when an American president is using economic power for political means. This is a real change in the way in which geopolitics operates. If you help us on a particular issue, we will make sure that we will not put up your tariffs. It's tariffs for peace in a sense. The only problem is we're not getting the peace. And although some countries like Britain have worked very closely with the Americans and have their tariffs reduced to 10%, other countries, such as an organization such as the EU, are being punished by President Trump. So the Chinese work in very mysterious ways, but it is unusual for them to start making statements of this kind. And therefore their intervention must be for a purpose. I don't think they're particularly wanting to suck up to the president. They don't seem to me to be like the kind of country that does that. But it is important that we recognize that there is an important intervention here and it should be acted upon.
Keith, I'm interested by the comments that were made at the UN Security Council meeting, talking about attacks on civilian infrastructure, talking about the humanitarianism of this conflict and war, which of course has seen civilian casualties reported on both sides. This in the wake of reports that have said that Russia could potentially be supporting, China could be supporting Russia through the sale of technology and potential elements that can make up military assets. That is, of course, only a report, but could this potentially be one thing to one side and one thing to the other? Do you think China are trying to keep Russia and the US both on side, given the instability at the moment?
I think they probably are. I think what China is not an interventionist nation, and nothing seems to worry China particularly more than Taiwan. If you introduce the T word in any discussion, or if anything is to do with Taiwan, China goes berserk and starts issuing threats, etc. Otherwise, it uses soft power in a way that no other nation on this planet uses it. So when it does intervene, it could be doing so, of course, for its own purposes, i.e. on the economic and tariffs front, but also they could be doing it because they genuinely feel that ramping up the world disorder is not in their interests. After all, they hold a lot of American debt. The world is all interlinked to each other. And therefore, we need to remember that they have a lot in this. They've got a lot of skin in the game. And they need to make sure that the economic prosperity of the world continues, because they lose the most. They've got the most money invested in the United States. Something that President Trump would be wise to remember. The Chinese suddenly call in their debt. It would cause massive problems to the Americans. So I think everyone knows what's going on. The trouble is, Joshua, those of us in public service or in the news service, such as NewsX, we have to react to everything that Donald Trump says. And when he says something like, I'm moving my submarines, everyone goes mad and wants to know why that's the case. The Chinese are very, very careful. They don't overreact, and I think their intervention, therefore, is much more serious for the purpose of doing that.
Yes, absolutely, Keith. We are short on time, but just a brief question for you. August the 8th is that deadline that Trump has set for sanctions on Russia and third-party countries. Do you think that that will actually come into place?
No. It will definitely be extended one way or the other, because as we speak, Zelensky is on the phone to Russia, to Britain, France and Germany to ask for a peace summit. As soon as the Europeans do something, then President Trump feels he has to do something as well. The deadline will not happen. That's my prediction. Of course, if I'm wrong, you can have me on the 12th of August and tell me that I was wrong, but this deadline is very elastic.
Well, Keith, right or wrong, it will be a pleasure to speak to you at that point, and thank you